Hey, it's Jeff Zito, and thanks for checking out another episode of the Celebrity Jobber Podcast, one of the top shows on Apple Podcasts. Please subscribe. Would love a 5-star rating and leave a review. Streaming on all podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcast, all of them. It's a pretty inspirational story and a sad story, a personal story. Dewey, Behind the Gold Glove, the name of the book. Dwight Evans had a 20-year career with the Boston Red Sox with over 2,400 hits, 385 home runs, and a .272 lifetime batting average. A pretty interesting story that might not have happened. It was a big decision Dwight made early on in his life that maybe was a big factor of him becoming who he was. We'll talk about that. His first job, his jobs after baseball, his new book, and so much more. This week, Red Sox Hall of Famer Dwight Evans, my guest this week on Celebrity Jobber.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, give a 5-star rating, and leave a review. Check out all our past episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you pod. What if these celebrities weren't famous? What would they have become? What was their first job? We're about to find out.
It's got to be very difficult to sit down and write a book. I mean, I'm the type of guy that is afraid of writing anything. How did you get to this point?
Zito, we lost two of our sons 6 years ago, 10 months apart from brain cancer, from a disease called neurofibromatosis, which is short for what we call it NF, to be short, because a lot of people can't pronounce it. But and then my wife was diagnosed 3 years ago with cancer, rare cancer. And I said, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. And I started working with Eric Sherman, who we've known each other off and on for 20-some years. And we always wanted to do a book, and so we started doing it about 3 years ago. So there's a lot of work in it. It's a lot of opening up. I'm very tight to the chest, and he asked some great questions and brought a lot out of me. So, again, not an easy thing to do, and not something that you want to relive. I mean, I had to read it so many times I became numb to it because we're editing and things like that. But there's chapters in there that just, bring you to tears, and there's a lot of emotion in it and inspiration.
Is it therapeutic somewhat? I mean, look, nobody ever thinks about burying their own children. Two sons tragically passed away from this disease. Was there a part of you that needed to write this book because it would kind of help you get over the hump? Yes. I mean, that's not why I wrote it, but it has helped me out that way emotionally. There's no question. Just talking about it. There's times I don't want to talk about it. Right.
And it's something we deal with every day. And my oldest son would call us 5-6 times a day just to talk. We miss those phone calls.
Yeah.
And my younger son was just not. We would talk once a week, but we miss those phone calls. And it has. I would say it's helped me out emotionally. There's no question. But I think it was a story that needed to be told. And with my wife having cancer, she's doing very well, by the way. So right. That's a good thing. So she's enjoying this book as well.
Let me go all the way back, because there was a certain thing about your career that really piqued my interest. And that was you're a California kid, born and raised in California, and you were in a high school team, and you switched high schools in the 10th grade because your coach or coaches weren't treating you well, or tell me about that experience.
Okay, born in Santa Monica, and we moved to Hawaii at 8 months old. So I came back to California at 10 and started playing baseball. Go out for the JV team in the 10th grade. There's only three-year high schools there at that time. So this coach didn't give me any looks, really. I mean, we'd play varsity, and I'd hit home runs, and still I had to come to the games and sit in my street clothes and watch them play. And so I transferred to Chatsworth High School, which I was on the border anyway of that district. So, and then I make the varsity team, and I start making all Valley this and all Valley that. I got a few cards from scouts. So I went from nothing to, being scouted. And then the last year, my senior year, I was 17 years old when I was drafted. Got about 15 cards from teams, major league teams to fill out, and the rest is history, really.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito.
Dewey, do you ever think about if you just were like, oh, well, I guess these guys aren't seeing it, or I'll just try harder. If you didn't make that move to the other high school, if you just kind of sat back and tried it next year, tried a little harder next year, you realize that maybe me and you aren't talking right now and all this stuff doesn't happen to you. Do you ever think about that?
I don't, but the older I get, I start doing it. Then, Zito, when you ask that kind of a question, it brings back those things, and I start thinking about them. And it's amazing. Being a Christian and having a relationship with God, I look where He's brought me, and I look at all the good things and the things we went through and how I've grown as a person. And my wife and I, we're 54 years married now, and we got married at 18, and back then, everyone thought we had to get married. We didn't have kids for 4 years, but I think it's made me a better person. Just all the stuff I went through and growing up. Didn't go to college, but I learned from hard knocks, and I learned well.
Dwight, what did your father do for work?
He worked for Sheraton Hawaii, and that's why we were in Hawaii for those years, and Sheraton hotels, and then that's what he did. He was in the Navy, World War II, and right at the end of the war, but worked for Sheraton Hawaii. Did
Dad have a baseball background? Was he a baseball player growing up? How did you learn the game?
He was a basketball player. Played at Pepperdine.
Oh wow!
And he was an athlete. He was about 6'4.5", which is a pretty big guy. In fact, the scout, when he saw me, he looked at my dad and he looked at my mother. My mother was 5'8". He said, well, this kid's going to grow. I was only 6 feet, weighed 170 pounds, but ended up growing 3 inches that year. But anyway, my father was a good athlete. And baseball wasn't part of his thing. I just picked it up, and I had a grammar school teacher saw me play softball and recess and all that. She said, you should sign up for Little League. And I did. And if it weren't for her, I don't think I'd have done it.
Wow. I remember growing up and watching a lot of the latter part of your career. Incredible. Is there a moment that stands out that kind of, I don't want to call it a big break, because, in baseball, it's a grind, man, and you earn everything. 162 games a year. There's no breaks in baseball. But was there a moment for you where everything changed? Was it a home run? Was it, a World Series with the Big Red Machine? You were still a kid at the time. Was there a particular moment that changed for you always?
About 1980, I was a hitter that hit to center field, right center, left center. And when I came up, they said, this is what they said to me at 20 years old, get a piece of cheese and wrap it around the pole. And I'm 20 going, well, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Well, getting a piece of cheese means get a fastball and wrap it around the pole, pull it. They wanted me to become a pull hitter. And I was not a pull hitter. So I suffered from that. And in 1980, I got back to the middle of the field, and things just turned around for me in 1980. But the things that were meant most to me is playing in World Series, playing in 2 of them, and doing well in both of them. Only thing that didn't happen is we didn't win either one of them. We both won 7 games, and they were just too close. The 86 series was great for the Mets. It was terrible for us, but it just, 75 was thinking that we had a team then. We had a great team then that we'd play in 2 or 3 World Series in the next 5 years. Didn't play in another one for 11 years. They're hard to get to. They're truly hard to get to.
They are. And you watch any of the game last night? I mean, is there any part of you that feels for some of these guys on the Yankees, like Garrett Cole, who, doesn't cover first base and, kind of a routine thing, kind of a mental screw up? It happens, but do you carry that kind of stuff with you for a long time?
You do. And seeing World Series play, your concentration level is so high that stuff like that shouldn't happen. That should not happen. That's just baseball. That's common baseball, and those kind of things cannot happen. I mean, we can call it a brain fart. Yeah, it was, but it's a huge one. You can't be doing that in World Series play. I truly think when I came from Hawaii at 10 years old, Dodgers were the first team that I followed. Of course, I'm a diehard Red Sox now, but the only skin I had in the game is I really wanted to see. I love Mookie Betts, and Kike Hernandez was with us a couple of years ago, and loved some of those players on that team. Rizzo was with us in the minor leagues. We traded him to San Diego, and the rest of his story was with the Cubs and now the Yankees. But, I feel for those guys, and I feel for the Yankees because it's no fun being in a World Series and being the bridesmaid. There's no fun there. So proud of the Dodgers. I'm happy for them. They've spent a ton of money.
Yeah, they did.
The two greatest players are both going to be MVPs. Ohtani and I think the center fielder,
Aaron Judge.
I just had a brain fart. I had a cold moment right there. Judge is going to be MVP in the American League and Ohtani in the National League. And both those guys, they really didn't perform to their capability.
Yeah.
And it happens. It
does.
happens. So
it's a lot. Like you said, it's a lot. And I get it. Even some of the errors and stuff, but it's baseball. And when you get to the World Series, you can't make those mistakes.
You can't.
It's either you make a mistake or you go home. I mean, and that's what happened with the Yanks.
That's right.
Celebrity Jobber. The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito.
Now, Dewey, 17 years old, drafted, and picked in the 5th round to go to the Boston Red Sox. You ever have a job before that? What was your first?
Yeah,
tell me about it. Tell me about your first job.
Well, I worked as a dishwasher in a restaurant. I grew up. My parents owned a restaurant, so to make money. And when Susan and I first got married, when 18, and I had already played in 2 minor league seasons, but I came back to California. We painted houses, and we didn't make enough money to get us through the winter. So yeah, I had other jobs, and not great jobs. And I'd go to instructional league, which is a winter, got me more money and make it through the winter times. But yeah, we painted a lot of houses. We did a lot of things. Today, these guys have 2 and 3 homes, and I don't fault them for that. It's not their fault. But you look at the ones that excel. It's a lot of pressure playing for that much money as well. So another thing comes along with that. You don't see guys play as long as I played 20 years. You don't see that anymore because the money, and you're hurting, and you go, I don't need this, and my body's taking a beating. And Jimmy Rice and I played 16 years ago, and we always said, hey, if I only played when I felt good, I never would have played.
That's right.
So. Yeah, but we played. I'm glad we played in the era we played, and it was fun. It was a fun career.
What about after baseball, Dewey? You have had a career in baseball after baseball? Yes. I worked. I've been with the Chicago White Sox. I was a hitting coach for the Rockies in '94. And then I was a hitting coach for the Red Sox in 2002. But in between that, I worked in the minor leagues for other teams, and I came back to the Red Sox in the year 2000 and been with them ever since. And I still go to spring training, so I stay involved. I'm still in uniform, and my job now is I'm a mentor and try to get the guys from AAA to the major leagues, make that giant step of getting to the big leagues. So you know that Tristan Casas?
Yes.
The first baseman, my son played with him way back when. What do you think he's going to turn into?
Well, I don't know. I still think he strikes out a lot. I like the kid. He's a worker. He's a hard worker and takes everything very serious. He's still young.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what to say about him other than he's got a lot of power, and sometimes he swings too big, but that's just part of growing in the game. And I think that he shows his potential. So, and I hated that word potential because that's what they used on me for the first 7 or 8 years. Oh, he's got potential. Well, you know what? That potential doesn't do too much for you. So you gotta produce. With him, I think he will.
What do you think you'd be doing? You lived a dream, right? You know, not everybody plays in the major leagues. Everybody dreams of playing in the major leagues when they're a kid. But you ever think about that? Probably not. But
I'm totally blessed to have been in this game as long as I have and be around younger people. And now when I go to spring training around kids that are 19, 18, and some are 35, and they're still younger than my kids would be or whatever. But no, I feel very blessed. The career that I've had and played as long as I have, I'm still involved in the game and still helping people be better at the game.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. Celebrity Jobber.
I am just honored to speak with you today. It was a great conversation. The book, Dewey, Behind the Gold Glove, not only about his career, about the tragedy that he had, within his family and his sons, his wife's battle with cancer, who, by the way, she's doing well. Tough to open up, but a real inspirational story. And I urge everybody to check this book out again, Dewey, Behind the Gold Glove, available everywhere. Dwight, again, real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Zito, so much a pleasure for me to talk to you. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
It's a little bit of a tearjerker, to be honest with you. It's very personal. 2 sons diagnosed with this disease. They both passed away. He's writing about that in the book. His wife's battle with cancer, who's doing good now. So that's good news. But, writing this book, he said he's going through it. He has to reread it so many times. It's emotional. It helped him. He didn't know that it was going to help him, but it did help him go through this stuff. And, looking back on a great career, his dad was an athlete, went to Pepperdine, played basketball. It's a beautiful campus, by the way. I've never seen the campus, only online, but it looks like a country club for sure. And Dwight just kind of picked up baseball. His dad worked for the Hotel Sheridan in Hawaii and then again in California. Then it seemed like his parents opened up their own restaurant where Dwight had his first job as a dishwasher. And he also talked about, the money was a lot different in the 60s and 70s in professional baseball. He also talked about in the offseason, he would paint houses to make some extra money in the offseason. I thought that was funny, but you can't help but think if this didn't happen for him, maybe he would have gone on in his family business of maybe running restaurants, because I can't help but think if this kid at 15 years old didn't switch high schools, he might not be Dwight Evans, Boston Red Sox Hall of Fame. He might have been another person. He was not getting any attention from his coach. He wouldn't even suit up for games. He's sitting in the dugout in street clothes. And do you realize what an important or difficult move changing high schools is for a young kid? Maybe not as difficult for Dwight because he said he was on the borderline of 2 different high schools. So maybe he did know kids that went to the other high school. And when he made the switch, he was all Valley this and area player of the year and was getting scouted. But I just can't help but think if he didn't change schools, he might have gone on to run his parents' restaurants and not have been a professional baseball player. I just can't help but think that. And I think it's a good message for young kids chasing a dream. Give it your best shot, because there comes a time when, it's over. Dewey, Behind the Gold Glove. Check this book out, available everywhere. Dwight Evans from the Boston Red Sox. Great guest right here on Celebrity Jobber. One of the top shows on Apple Podcasts. So please subscribe. Would love a 5-star rating and leave a review. Past episodes on CelebrityJobber.com. You can follow on Instagram, CelebrityJobber_podcast, or YouTube.com/the@CelebrityJobber. What if? It's a big question. If Dwight Evans didn't make that move and switch high schools, who knows? He might be running restaurants. So glad he made that decision. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Celebrity Jobber Podcast. And until next time, I'm Jeff Zito.